You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So do you remember last summer we had that whole chop and chaz thing? It's never really been resolved. Who ordered the police station to basically be evacuated and police not come back so that we can have our summer of love that just didn't end up all that well? You remember that whole thing? Well, this storyline keeps going, and we add yet another lawsuit to it. What's going on this time? Well, records officers who blew the whistle about the Seattle mayor's missing texts just filed a $5 million lawsuit claim against the city. So we've got a lawsuit just over CHOP. We've got a lawsuit from, I think, both sets of parents from the first kid who got murdered within CHOP. We've got a lawsuit from business owners and local residents against the city for the lawlessness. There's at least, I think, 2 more lawsuits in there. And everybody kind of wants to know, all right, who ordered the evacuation of the precinct and who basically said, this is a go. Let's see what happens in an autonomous zone or an occupy protest zone where there's no police or real services. So the person who said, hey, you didn't retain your records like you were supposed to. Person who blew that whistle, yep, they are no longer under the employ and they've got a lawsuit going. That's what we're talking about today. Before we jump on in, if you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies and I read the news. Sometimes it's Seattle news, sometimes it's elsewhere, but this is a good enough one where, Seattle's we've got some juicy tidbits here. Let's jump on in. Okay. The public records officer who blew the whistle about Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan's missing text messages earlier this year have filed claims against the city, alleging they felt compelled to resign after being subjected to hostile conditions and retaliation in the mayor's office. Imagine that. Isn't that shocking? So what happened? Well, there's this huge period of time where the mayor's texts went missing. Fire Chief Scoggins, his text went missing. Police officials went missing. I mean, just about everybody that was having communication on the whole chop/chaz thing. All of their text messages, they're gone. What happened to them? Well, we had some login issues. We had some password issues. And also, we're just not very good at keeping records. I mean, it's pretty obvious that this is a cover-up. I mean, what else can you say? That's my opinion. But it's like, all right, really? All these people, and I've had you guys write in, I've stated in previous podcasts, what are the odds that this happens to like 5 or 6 individuals at the top of the heap that were all communicating together on how to have the whole chop/chaz thing go down. And by down, I mean just take place, where you coordinate with the East Precinct, Seattle Police Department East Precinct. Yeah, we're going to have you walk away and we're not going back anytime soon. And that's kind of what allowed CHOP to happen, right? So who has the liability there? Who said, yep, you're doing that? That's what we're trying to figure out. And a lot of that's going to be in those text messages, and that's why it's so important. The claims by Stacy, Irwin and Kimberly Ferreiro each seek $5 million big ones in damages. Under state law, claims must be filed at least 60 days before the city can be sued. Irwin and Ferreiro plan to sue if their claims aren't resolved in that time, said their lawyer, Susan Mindenbergs. The city is not able to comment on pending claims or litigation, Durkin spokesperson Anthony Derrick said Wednesday. In early May, a Seattle Ethics and Elections Commission investigation report revealed that Durkin's texts from late August of 2019 to late June 2020 had not been retained. Interestingly enough, CHOP was cleared out July 1st. So late August 2019, that's going back a bit, isn't it? What else is in there? What happened in September of 2019? I don't know, but there's got to be some stuff in there as well, right? So August 2019 to late June 2020. So almost a year of texts were deleted each month. They had the setting set for delete after 30 days. All right. But that's illegal given the record-keeping laws in the state of Washington. And let's just keep going. So Durkin's text from late August 2019 to late June 2020 had not been retained. Several high-profile lawsuits that have been filed against the city focus on decisions the mayor and other officials made last June during racial justice protests and unrest on Capitol Hill. There is a lot on the line here. There's a lot of money on the line. There's a lot of payout on the line from the city of Seattle. And there's also a lot of political fallout that could happen if we find out what happens. I mean, we're going to figure out kind of who's to blame for this mess. And then there's some liability, right? I mean, that's the general idea. Who knows what's going to happen? Because this storyline is just so, 6, 7 people, leaders in our community, their text messages just miraculously weren't retained. That's interesting. Triggered by a complaint that Irwin made with support from Ferreiro, the Ethics Commission's investigation determined that the mayor's office had broken the state's Public Records Act, the PRA, while dealing with requests from reporters and others for Durkin's communications. So it's not that they deleted the texts. It's how they handled requests from the reporters and others for Durkin's communications. Oh, just remembered another one of the lawsuits. The Seattle Times sued to try and figure out, all right, what's going on here in regards to the texts. And there's one other lawsuit out there that I can't remember. I mean, it's like there's so many of these, lawsuits and liability and stuff going on. That's what makes this story so interesting, because at the end of the day, are we going to figure much of this out? It's not looking that way, but we'll get some of it. Some of it'll come out, and there'll just be probably some massive payouts, right? Isn't that about how this usually goes down? Some massive payouts. Nobody really admits liability, but some big checks get written because guess what? The city of Seattle, taxpayers, maybe there's some Seattle folks here. Your money is being spent doing this sort of nonsense. So the investigation didn't examine how or why the mayor's text went missing. Isn't that interesting? We don't really care. That's not really the deal. It focused on how requests for those records were handled. It's kind of like taking, the initial mob down, for tax evasion, that whole drill. It's like, don't worry about the actual crimes. Get them on something you can actually get them on. And it's how those records were handled. How did you handle the request for those records? Oh, you didn't handle them the way you're supposed to? That was illegal? Okay, here we go. Under state law and guidelines, local elected officials' texts and other communications about public business must be kept for at least 2 years before being transferred to the state archives for further assessment. The legal counsel for the mayor's office, Michelle Chen, engaged in improper governmental action by using narrow interpretations of certain requests to exclude Durkin's texts from those requests, the commission's investigation found. What do you think that looks like? That's that request right there. If we answer that truthfully and if we respond to that, I am going to narrow this description of what I'm supposed to respond to. We're not responding on that bad boy. That's not a good one. So I'm going to just only respond to this criteria. So we have an exclusion of a lot of information here, and that exclusion was illegal. So Chen also directed the records officers not to inform requesters that Durkin's texts were missing. Don't tell them. We can't tell them. This might get out. We'll all get sued and we'll lose our jobs. Well, yeah, That did happen, right? It's happening. That's why I'm reading this story. So Chen also directed the records officers not to inform requesters that Durkin's texts were missing and to instead provide them with some exchanges recreated from the phones of employees the mayor had texted with, the investigation determined. What are we talking about here? All right, so I've got my phone. I'm texting you. You get a text on your end. You text me back. We've got this big, long text thread going, right? So the recreations are what's on your phone. Consider me Mayor Durkan, and you've got this big, long text on your phone, big, long text thread. So that's the recreation, is somebody's contacting you and, hey, would you mind sharing your text with us with Mayor Durkan on, June 10th in the heat of CHOP? Could we just take a peek at your phone for, we just need to download a few of those texts. We're going to recreate some of these records. That's exactly what that means. All right. So Durkin had 60 days under Seattle law to reply to the commission's investigation with steps to address Chen's conduct. Is this really Chen's fault? No, she's probably just doing what she's told, right? In a letter to the commission in May, a lawyer representing Chen criticized the investigation as rushed and unfair, arguing it failed to account for advice about the missing texts that Chen received from the Seattle City Attorney's Office, potential bias by Irwin and Ferreiro, and efforts, third, by Chen to improve records work in Durkin's office. I tried. Let's look at that again. It's rushed and unfair. Okay. Yeah, maybe. The advice about the text that Chen received from the city attorney's office. I got some bum advice from our attorneys. All right, but we still had to let you go. Potential bias by Irwin and Ferreiro. Okay. Maybe. Let's find out, right? And efforts by Chen to improve records work in Durkin's office. I tried my darndest. I gave it a shot. I gave it a good college try. Got fired. It's not looking good, is it? Chen's lawyer, Darwin Roberts, said Wednesday, Ms. Chen strongly denies the allegations by Ms. Irwin and Ms. Ferreiro. She looks forward to the facts of this matter becoming public in any suit they might bring. I do too. I look forward to the facts. I'll read you the facts when they come out. I mean, so we've literally just got this plethora of lawsuits out there, and everybody's like, okay, there's a lot of posturing going on. That's what's happening. The mayor's office hired retired Judge Bruce Hillier, and that name is familiar. Retired Judge Bruce Hillier through the city's attorney's office to conduct an independent review, and Hillier determined the commission's investigation was conducted appropriately. This is the commission that found that there was some illegal conduct done. He recommended that Chen no longer oversee public records. All right, that's not so much. You're gonna have to figure out another. We're gonna have to release you to a better opportunity where you can flourish. We feel that here at the city of Seattle, you have outgrown your potential, and we need to release you to an opportunity that you really deserve. I want to see you get just the maximum of what you can get out of your employment. We really appreciate you. You've done some fine work here, but we got to release you. That's how that goes, right? He recommended that Chen no longer oversee public records, that the mishandled records requests be reopened, and that the mayor's office overhaul its records system. But we're not really saying who did it and why, are we? We're just talking about record keeping. In a July 2nd letter to the commission's executive director, Wayne Barnett, Mayor Durkin, agreed that the underlying actions fell short of the city's obligations under the PRA, writing that no government should be looking to narrowly apply the law. Well, that's pretty easy to say if you've already kind of skirted some of the issues on the text that were out there, but apparently are no longer out there. Are they out there somewhere? I was thinking about this. Can't somebody get a hold of these texts somehow? Can't somebody subpoena something somewhere? I remember during my divorce, people were talking about, you might have all your texts, subpoenaed. I was like, that's fine. Whatever. You've got everything else already. Just subpoena what you need to and let them move on. But this is not a divorce. This is massive liability, possibly, potentially, by the city and whomever ordered this to happen or gave the orders or can be found, liable by the court of law. Some payouts are going to happen. Show me the money. The mishandled requests have been reevaluated and a systematic overhaul has begun, she wrote, noting that Chen has technically been on loan from the city's attorney's office. Well, she's not really a city employee. She's from the city attorney's office. We're going to give her back. She was on loan. Hey, thank you for the loan. Why don't you move on back? Chen's time in the mayor's office will end in August, and the city's human resources department has recommended that she receive a written reprimand. A written reprimand. See how this is working? This kind of nonsense does not happen in the private sector. Additional training and removal from records work, Durkin wrote. Oh, sorry. So the HR person from the city recommended that she receive a written reprimand and some additional training and removal from records work. You and records, you're like oil and water. It's not going to work out. So we need you to go from records work to this department over here. Your salary will stay the same. We will pay you to take some additional training. And here's your reprimand. You've been bad. And that's literally what Durkin wrote. While Chen has been removed from records work from the mayor's office, Durkin believes other actions are up to the city attorney's office, she wrote. I do want to note that while I agree Ms. Chen's actions here do not comport with the PRA, I believe it would be deeply unfair to define Ms. Chen by these actions. She did some solid work. She effed up on this stuff over here. But, you can't define her just by that stuff. We got to look at the bigger body of actions because that is, it's an overall picture. The stuff over here, where she we're kind of sending her down the river with those actions. That doesn't define her by her entirety. Some political stuff, isn't it? This is just some political stuff. During her tenure, Ms. Chen has provided invaluable work and dedicated service to the city, with the exception of that stuff at the end here. This is particularly true over the last 16 months of historical challenges for our city, Durkin said. This person is literally sent down the river, isn't she? The claims filed by Irwin and Ferreiro allege that they were demanded to perform illegal acts. Maybe they were. I mean, this kind of sounds like a situation where that would happen, right? I mean, hey, yeah, this is what we're releasing, and we're going to apply this very narrow, view on how we're going to respond to these requests. So that's how we're going to avoid it. See the wording? All right, you're going to follow this part, but not necessarily that part. And they were subjected to scorn, ridicule, abuse, and hostility from Ms. Chan and managers in retaliation for their trying to comply with the PRA. And that's what made them whistleblowers, right? That created a hostile work environment which no reasonable person could be expected to endure. Can't have that in the workplace. That's what the claim says. Irwin went on to leave in February and Ferreiro in March due to stress and anxiety. Their coworkers, they didn't want him there. They took the fall. They got whacked. So Irwin resigned on July 1st and Ferreiro on April 2nd, according to the claims. It was too much. They had to go. They had to leave. So we got people exiting left and right, some voluntarily, quasi-voluntarily, some not. We're going to need you to not handle records anymore. And bad person. Yeah, bad person. But you can still stay on with the city. I'm sure we'll find you a good spot. That's just how city politics works, right? Durkin's office initially attributed the loss of her text to an unknown technology issue. I wish I could say that to all my stuff. What happened there, Sean? What happened there? An unknown technology issue. I don't know what it was. It's technology, and it's an issue beyond what I can take responsibility for. It was an unknown technology issue. That would never fly in the private sector, right? It just doesn't. Oh yeah? An unknown technology issue. I don't think so. What's the deal? Tell me what the deal is. I mean, that's kind of how this works. But, you know, you're mayor of a big city. Unknown technology issue. And then acknowledge that her phone at some point was set to delete texts older than 30 days. Who did that? Who had access to your phone? Is there a couple of people that have access to your phone? Is there a lot of people that have access to your phone? If there are, that's an issue. If there's not, then there should be just a couple of people that are monkeying around with the buttons on your phone, right? Who are they? Who did it? Let's find out. Who said, hey, you know that setting that says, you know, the little button on your iPhone that says, all right, click this button to delete texts older than 30 days, or allow the text to remain on for 6 months, whatever it is. Who had access to that? There's only a couple of people, right? It's not like there's 30 people marching through. Hey, Mayor Durkan, can I see your phone? I need to, redo one setting. All right, here you go. And just toss the phone off and somebody doesn't, dials up some stuff. No, that's not how this works. But somehow her phone at some point was set to delete texts older than 30 days, which is against the law in the state of Washington, right? I mean, it's against the record keeping law. So violation of the law, breaking the law. So neither Durkin nor the IT department has taken responsibility for selecting that setting, which violates state law and the city's retention policies. A written report by a consultant who conducted a forensic analysis is pending, and the city has spent at least $123,000 on the work. Did I hear that right? $123,000 on the work, a forensic analysis. How do you spend 123 big ones on, it's mind blowing to me. But whatever, you know what I mean? If I was a tax-paying citizen of Seattle, I would be like, what? How does that work? $123,000 on a forensic analysis. So that's where they just go in and they do a deep dive and they really get in there and figure stuff out, right? What's that going to look like? Is that going to be released? Is that a public record thing? I don't know. I'd like to see it though. That'll probably be a good story. I'll probably do a podcast on that, right? So neither the mayor nor the IT department is taking any responsibility for any of this. I don't know. It just happened. Oof, yeah, technology issues. Texts from 8 other officials, including the city's fire chief and then police chief, are also missing from periods that include last June. Why is June? What's the common theme with June here? That's when Chop and Chaz happened, right? Beginning of June to the end of June. That's the whole period. That's why this is just, to me, there's shenanigans going on here, folks. Shenanigans, big shenanigans, political shenanigans. The city has attributed some of those missing texts to password and software problems. Really? Password and software problems. So we've got unknown technology issues. We've got password and software problems. No, that's not how this works. We're adults here. We can kind of see right through to this. There's not password and software problems. You can get into your account. You're texting on your damn phone right now, right? Right? So what's going on? Well, the stuff that happened in June, there's a lot of liability associated with it, and we're trying to avoid said liability. That's what we're doing. But what makes this really interesting from an outside perspective is that there's so many different angles going on, And you know at some point something's going to come out where you're like, oh, okay, well, that's a good clue of where we're headed. It's going to be an interesting one to figure out, right? So I'm looking forward to the forensic analysis. I'm looking forward to some more excuses as to why the texts were missing, who allowed this situation to happen, where's the blame, who else is going to get fired, how many other lawsuits are going to happen. This storyline isn't nearly as interesting as the whole Chop and Chaz thing with the, no police in a zone. But this has got a lot of little bits and pieces that do make for a storyline that you're like, okay, wow. So I guess bottom line is we're just going to have to wait and see how some of this stuff plays out. But it's looking more and more like shenanigans in Seattle. Sleepless in Seattle, shenanigans in Seattle. On a big picture, on a big political picture. This story here, this came out in, the AP carried it, ABC News carried it. I mean, this is a big deal. You got some crazy stuff going on. Kind of like Chop and Chaz, right? All right. That's it for me on this one. I think I've beaten it to death enough. I think I made fun of enough ridiculous thing. Password and software problems. I wish I could blame my business issues on password and software problems. What happened, Sean? Password and software problems. No, that just doesn't fly. It's like, you got to take responsibility. Okay, I screwed that up. How do you want to handle this? What do you want to do? That's kind of how you handle things. But I think there's so much liability floating around on these issues here. We're going to try and dodge the bullet. Shenanigans in Seattle. It's a thing. All right. Thanks so much for joining me here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I will catch up with you soon. Until then, stay safe. We'll talk then. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.